Hi.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Some
Yeah,
fun.
we're gonna just wait and get everyone a few seconds to join in. Sometimes this takes a couple minutes to actually load up, so
Okay, I'm
give me a
ready.
second. Amazing. Oh, I see Connie. Is that your mama?
That is my mama.
Hi, Mama. Amazing. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Happy Thursday.
We've started
Awesome.
calling Thursdays Friday Eve.
Friday
If
Eve.
anyone needs a
Yeah.
top tip, happy Friday Eve.
Friday Eve, Friday Junior. Oh, there you go. Awesome. Well, we are on time today, which I love. 3 days in, we've figuring this out, but wanted to welcome you, Vanessa, to our International Women's Day Break the Bias series. I've been looking forward to this conversation for the whole week, even before that, and I would love before you introduce yourself, I just wanted to share with everybody. Obviously, we've been talking, we framed this week around breaking the bias, belonging. We had on Tuesday with the ladies from Great Place to Work. I encourage you to go on our archive and watch that recording. Yesterday, we had a great conversation around inclusion and representation with Kurt Johnson from Foremoon. That recording is now up. And today, we're talking all about achievement with an achiever, which I'm super excited about. Vanessa Brangwyn, Chief Revenue and Customer Officer for Achievers. Vanessa, please introduce yourself to our community. Tell us a little about you and Achievers, and we'll go from there.
Amazing. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really thrilled and honored to be part of the series that Loma's running this week. As Lauren said, my name is Vanessa Brangwyn, and I currently serve as the Chief Customer and Revenue Officer for Achievers, which is an HR tech software company founded and headquartered in Toronto. And we focus on ensuring that employees feel engaged, appreciated, recognized, valued, and heard. So it's quite the mission. Our mission is to change the way the world works. And I actually met Lauren in my earliest days at Achievers, which was over 11 years ago. So it's been a long time that I've been on this journey, but I'm incredibly proud of the amazing work that we do, of the teams I lead and serve, and of the incredible organizations we partner with all over the globe who are really making the world a better place for their employees, making the work world a better place for their employees. Outside of work, I am a mom. I have an amazing 7.5-year-old son named Evan. We live in Toronto, Canada, and just gets so much fulfillment out of seeing the world through his eyes. It's just truly amazing and so special.
Amazing. And I feel so fortunate that I've had a chance to know you for those 11 years, someone I look up to greatly and have learned so much from you. Maybe you can share a little bit about your journey from when you started at Achievers to where you are now, kind of the roles you've taken on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that the theme for today is achievement, not just because I work in an organization called Achievers, but achievement has been something, in the true sense of the word that I've always sought after, I've always aspired to. And so when I joined Achievers back in 2011, we were actually a much smaller, probably lesser known organization called I Love Rewards. And I started as an individual contributor in a role that was really focused on partnering with our customers to make sure they were getting full use of the platform. And back in 2011, we were around 80 people. We had an awesome onboarding program. Lauren was actually my buddy. Which was another fellow team member that was assigned to each new hire to really help them not just learn a lot about the company and kind of what we do, but learn about the culture, just have a go-to person for questions. And that really set me off on a what in retrospect has become just an incredible trajectory. The organization has gone through so many chapters. We evolved that year. We changed our name. We've been through numerous ownership formats. And, as the company grew, I really leaned into the opportunity to continue my growth and development. And it started really informally. I started in that first year, just taking a few people under my wing. I was often quickly became a go-to person. I had leadership experience in previous organizations, starting with my very first ever job at McDonald's, where I was a proud drive-through manager as a teenager. And that just carried forward, and I always have had this intense desire and really need to help others. And I see my role in that continuing all the way through to this day. And so I started taking people under my wing, and as often happens for those who've been on career journeys themselves, you've probably recognized that you start doing something and quickly people recognize that and say, hey, why don't you do more of that? And so that's really what started me on my leadership career at Achievers. And as the years have gone on and as opportunities have come up, I've continued to either rise to the challenge by putting my hand up or be tasked with additional responsibilities.
I feel like I can say this because I know you so well. If you were a born leader, I feel like you just were meant to be in the roles you've taken on. And as I said, I've learned so much from you. When we were chatting about this conversation, one of the things you and I talked about is kind of along this journey you've had what the worst advice you were given, at various points. So I would love you to share a little bit about that because I found it really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I've been given some amazing advice, but I've also been given some terrible advice. And sometimes with advice in general, you don't really know if it's good or bad until a little bit later. And so I remember a number of years ago, this is 2014, and I had shared with a couple of colleagues that I was going to be going on maternity leave. And I kind of got the advice that I should lower my expectations and essentially recognize and be okay with the fact that I was going to plateau in my career, that I would never achieve more than where I was at that time, which was at a manager level. And I was pretty shocked by that. I had never heard something like that before, but I trusted this person and just thought, okay, so I guess that's it. Turns out that having a baby is going to impact my career in this way, and it's going to mean that this is where I plateau. I will be a manager. And I just really believed it. I don't know now in retrospect, it sounds like such terrible advice, and maybe some people are watching are kind of thinking, why would you believe that? But again, came from a trusted person, someone with a lot more years of experience than I had at the time. And so I just thought, okay, that's where things are. I didn't like it, but I kind of, the advice was you should accept it and not be disappointed, essentially. And so, I went on maternity leave and kind of came back thinking, okay, here's where it's going to be. And what I quickly realized was when I came back to Achievers, a role had actually opened up, a VP level role. And again, I had in the back of my mind that I wouldn't be qualified or eligible to even consider myself for this role. But our leader at the time, who was the hiring manager, had said that he had planned to hire the role internally. And immediately upon that announcement, so many people, started coming up to me. This was at a company event saying, oh, are you going to apply? You should really apply. And I thought, oh my goodness, why are they saying this to me? Like I'm a manager. There's no way I could move to this VP role. And I really, suffered at that in that moment and continue to do so, which is a whole other topic of conversation from something that's commonly known as imposter syndrome, which is where you just don't think you're good enough to do something. And so I was really leveraged the confidence that others had in me. And I started thinking to myself, and a great advice that I got in juxtaposition to the terrible advice was to really ask yourself, when you're thinking about whatever decision you might be thinking about, or whether you're good enough to do something, and your self-talk is filled with all the reasons why you're not, to really take a stark look in the mirror, even a physical mirror if you can, and ask yourself, why not me? Why not me? And when I started doing that, I couldn't actually come up with any good reasons. And so I threw my hat in the ring, and that was this was in late 2015, and that really has set my career on a completely different, much more accelerated trajectory.
Yeah, it's so, if I can touch a little bit on what you said, because it came up in our conversation earlier this week with the ladies from Great Place to Work, is this idea of not feeling like you have all the tools, or you're not, if you can't do it perfectly, you don't, I'm not going to go for it, or like that imposter syndrome that we all struggle with, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
really tough. But what is it, do you think all your peers saw in you, like coming up to you being like, you should go for it, like, how did that, obviously probably felt good, but I think bridging the
Mm-hmm.
gap between their confidence in you and obviously the leadership, at Achievers believing you,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely, it definitely felt good, and I think as people, but also as women, we're incredibly hard on ourselves. We see a lot of things in others that we don't recognize in ourselves, and so having supporters, having sounding boards, people who can, you know, almost throw back your own advice to them back to you and say, if you just turn that around, like all the great advice you've given me or all the great things you tell me, try saying those things to yourself and see where that might get you. I think that's a really important part of it. But you're right, it's more than just that. It's so, in this moment, I felt like I was taking this huge leap, like literally jumping off a cliff. And not only did I have the support of people around me, but I did and do have great leaders who believed in me and who basically took a chance. And that's something that, I think if you talk to people about their career journeys, you'll probably hear a common theme that at some point someone took a chance on them. And, for me, I was definitely not the most qualified person. I definitely did not have the most years of experience out of the other people who had applied for the role. But somebody saw something in me, and I'll never forget the day our CRO at the time, our chief revenue officer, called me to tell me I got the job. He said, "You're what the team needs." And it wasn't even about the role, the specifically my years of experience or the specific skills. All of those things, of course, play a factor, but it really turned out to be more about who I was. And I think that was a really important lesson around achievement, which is the idea that who you are. We often talk about bringing your whole self to work and things like that, but that really matters. And finding the kind of organization and whether that's work or a hobby you participate in, family, community, friends, all of those things, finding people who accept you for who you truly are is just paramount to your ability to be successful and to feel successful.
100%. And I know something, we don't have to name names, and we can keep this person anonymous, but I know we talked about having that supportive leadership is like, is what contributes to that success, and something you shared about obviously reporting into a male leader and some of the things, the tools or sort of bandwidth he gave you, or freedom to be a mom or to do what you needed to do and do your role, be a leader at the same time, like really was so powerful. So if you're comfortable, would love for you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is really interesting. And I've talked since this time. So this is now going on over 6 years of being a working mom. I've talked to a lot of other working moms about what that's like, what that moment is like when you go back to work, you've left your newborn, infant, toddler, whatever age at home or with someone in care. And now you're trying to remember who you were kind of before and bring all of that. And for me, one thing that was particularly challenging is, and there's been a lot of research on this, the McKinsey report, Women in the Workplace report from 2021 talked a lot about this idea of being an only. So I've shared now with everybody that I got this VP role. I was the only woman on the leadership team. I was the only working mom on the leadership team. And my team not only was filled with men, but my leader was based in San Francisco. And, obviously in different parts of the world, there are different maternity leave policies and cultural differences. And so already I felt like, oh my goodness, people, and again, not because anybody actually was judging me, but I really felt like people may have judged me for having taken a whole year off and now have come back into this role. And I remember my son was, as most kids are when they're starting to be exposed to other kids, building their immunity and immune systems. He was sick quite often. And at first I tried to kind of like, hide that or not make it as obvious that I was having to miss work or run to daycare to pick him up or things like that. And that was really hard. And it was becoming like almost impossible. So I finally one day just said, I've just got to be upfront about this. And I called my leader and said, Evan, that's my son, he is sick and needs to be home for 24 hours. And I need to be home. I need to work from home and be home with him. And he was just so incredibly understanding. It really changed. It's forever changed the way I look at him and I think about him in terms of how he was like, of course you do. Of course that's your number one priority. Like it
Right.
didn't even miss a beat. And he knew because he trusted me that the work would get done. The meetings would happen, all the things that needed to happen would take place. But the fact that he trusted that, I would manage it and he believed in me gave me all the confidence to actually be able to do it.
Yeah. So, so important. Um, I wonder if we can pivot now slightly is to, because something also that I think you've highlighted so much as part of your role as a leader is this idea of paying it forward and,
Mm-hmm.
opening doors for others or supporting others, being mentor to others. Can you talk about how you've incorporated that into your role as a leader and how you've sort of supported others along the way?
Yeah, I love this question so much because I think that one of the things we can do as leaders, especially as women leaders, is really hold this thought, near and dear, this idea of paying it forward and really not just saying it because it sounds really nice, but living it every day and aligning our actions with that concept. And so for me, it takes a few different forms. First and foremost, I'm very proud to be the executive sponsor of the Achievers Women's Network, a role I've held for over 5 years. This is an employee resource group within an organization filled with women and men who strive to make the workplace better. Essentially, we have events, we run programs, we have campaigns and fundraising, all kinds of different wonderful things. And as the executive sponsor, I have the opportunity to really let the team kind of and the network do what they need to do, but also, provide feedback and guidance. And one of the programs that was spawned out of the Achievers Women's Network, AWN, was a mentorship program. And so we didn't have a formal program at Achievers. We definitely had people who were mentors and mentees, but we started formalizing it and really promoting it so that when people joined the organization, they knew this was an option for them. And our application rate continues to rise every year. We promote the partnerships in team meetings and company town halls so that both mentors and mentees can tell their story. And it's become so popular that we've spun it up into its own group now, the Achievers Mentorship Program, or AMP as we call it. And so I think those are the types of opportunities that are just so important for people, whether they're brand new in their career or they're experienced but thinking of perhaps a pivot or a change. There's so many benefits to both being a mentor and learning from someone else as well as having a mentor. And so I think some of the research shows that, in fact, this McKinsey report that I referenced earlier shows that though men outpace women in leadership positions 2 to 1, mentorship programs and sponsorships are almost equal in gender, and if not, there's more women than men, which essentially means that women are sharing more than 2 times the burden. And so I think that what people can do, no matter what gender they are, is focus on how can they help others.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that can be at all levels. I think sometimes people think, oh, you get to a certain level and you no longer need a mentor, or you no longer have imposter syndrome, or you no longer need somebody to bounce your ideas off of, when actually it's the opposite. You need those things more than ever. I remember Lauren, one of our old shared leaders, said to me something about how it gets really lonely at the top because you're facing a lot of problems every day in your workday, and there's not a lot of people you can talk to about them. And so I think sharing and being vulnerable are so important. So this idea of mentorship and even sponsorship, which takes mentorship to a whole another level, is really a great way to pay it forward.
Yeah. And that vulnerability is key, right? Because I think even at the top, you're still learning so much, and
Every day.
the learning never stops, right?
You're absolutely right. There's not, especially with the pace the world is working at and moving at, there are no playbooks or MBA courses or online resources that just have the perfect answer to things. A lot of it is figuring it out as we go. And if we've learned anything in the past 2 years, it's that we have to be able to pivot. We have to be adaptable. Resilience, grit, hustle, all of those things matter, but taking care of each other, nothing matters more than that.
100%. And especially when, I think, and you'd probably agree, is when you take care of the person, and their felt taken care of, the work only benefits, right? Like the workplace can only benefit when someone feels supported and bringing, like they're bringing their whole self to work. So I think that we have to focus on the human being first, and everything else
Absolutely.
comes after.
I could not agree more. It's
Yeah,
absolutely everything to helping people do the best work of their lives means we need to make sure first and foremost that they feel like that's possible. And if you're worried about, your sick child at home and not being there for them, or if you're taking care of a parent or something like that, it's going to be really hard to do that. So I think giving
yeah,
people space to be who they are, to ask for what they need. And that's another big thing, is not making assumptions that you know what people need. I've learned that lesson multiple times as a leader,
yeah.
where I think, oh, here's how I can help this person, and then only later do I realize that that wasn't the help they needed. So
Yeah,
just asking and making space for those conversations, I think is really the first step.
yeah. You know what they say about assuming.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I know we're kind of coming up on time, so if anyone who's joined has questions for Vanessa, please put them in. But while we're giving that space for any questions that come up, Vanessa, any final thoughts, anything else you'd love to share with everyone attending or anyone who watches this on demand?
Yeah, I mean, such an important topic. A huge thank you to people who are attending or watching. I think that just the fact that people are investing time and energy into this, and not just on International Women's Day. I hope we keep these conversations going all the time. I think more is more in this case, and
100%.
I know, Lo, we share a passion for Peloton, and one of our favorite Peloton instructors is an amazing woman named Tunde, and she's been speaking out a lot on being a woman in leadership and a woman in business and things like that. And I read a quote from her recently that really resonated with me, which was all about basically, as women and women in leadership, we should be demanding a seat at the table. But when we get there, when we get to that table where we've demanded the seat, we should pull the chair next to us out and invite someone else, man or woman, to sit down and bring their thoughts and perspective to the discussion. That diversity of thought, diversity of perspective is missing in so many of our business conversations, and in our life conversations. And so how can we really make that happen?
Oh, Tunde, gosh, love her. Although
Yeah,
curse her after a ride, but yes, love
I hear
her.
you.
And we can only go further together, right? So I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. Yana has a question. Is there an experience in your personal life that has profoundly influenced you as a leader outside of work?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, at this point in life, I feel like so many experiences have affected me in so many different ways in terms of who I am as a person, and who I am as a person directly translates into who I am as a leader. Little fun side note: when I was in high school, I had just the strongest aspirations to be a guidance counselor. I just thought that was the best, most interesting role in the world,
I
and
see it.
well, it's funny because I remember once thinking like, oh man, I used to want to be a guidance counselor. I never really made that come to life for myself. And then someone said, are you sure? I'm pretty sure that like, a lot of what you do is helping people develop and in their careers and things like that. So I think maybe not that specific experience, but something, all a bunch of different personal experiences tied together, is this idea that, not everything has to have a label on it, and you can look below the layers to see. When I unpack why I wanted to be a guidance counselor, it was because I loved listening to people. I
Mm-hmm.
loved helping. I loved feeling like I was supporting others. And for me, that type of accountability, feeling responsible for other people, is achievement. That's how I kind of define my success. When I feel most successful is when I see people that I've helped develop and grow and coach become the people become, not the people, but the careers or the roles, the responsibilities, the things that they aspired to do, and see those things come to fruition. That really feels just that's, kind of how I'm personally defining achievement. And it kind of ties back to that, I didn't recognize it at the time, but I guess that must be, and I don't know if anyone's a guidance counselor watching, but that must be how guidance counselors feel when they've coached someone all the way to becoming whatever that person wants to become, and then they kind of get there. So
Yeah.
I feel really privileged that I get to have these conversations, and that people trust me with their with their problems, with their feelings, with their vulnerabilities. So
Well, I can say firsthand, you have been a huge supporter of ours, of Loma's, of mine. You're just a beautiful person inside and out with so much to
aw,
offer. So I'm honored to know you, and I can't thank you enough for spending time today and sharing your journey. You've achieved so much and shared so much with everyone. So thank you. Keep doing you. Keep sharing your beautiful self with the world, and we really appreciate your time today.
thank you so much. The feeling could not be more mutual. I've loved every minute, and thank you again for the opportunity to participate. And happy
Amazing.
International Women's Day and Women's History Month and all those things.
Yeah, let's keep it going all year round.
Love it. All
Love it.
right.
Thanks, Vanessa. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.